Viewer discretion is advised.
Tampa Bay, easily the worst venue in all of baseball. Your shit dome is somehow still up to building code. It's 2017 and you still haven't planned out your new venue, and the Yankees have a better fucking facility in Tampa than the Trop. You got smoked in your one series appearance by the Phillies, and now you have been on a steady decline since all of your talent like David Price and Joe Maddon left to get paid elsewhere, and you just traded away your greatest ever. One of the most maligned ballparks on this list, the Trop, is one of the last stadiums with an artificial playing surface. This park was built for the purpose of attracting a team in 1990 and sat empty for 8 years. And when they started playing in it, yup, this happened. A lot. Some of the catwalks are in fair territory. It was built on a former gas plant, so they had to remove toxic chemicals from the ground. It's located far away from Tampa, and the inside looks as sterile as a hospital. But hey, they have a touch tank. The Rays got off to a great start, leading 4-0 after 2 innings, and then they realized they were the early 2000 Rays, and things got ugly. Boston exploded for a 10-run sixth in which Nomar hit 2 bombs in the inning. He finished with 8 RBI on only 3 hits as he added yet another homer, a grand slam, the next inning. He also married Mia Hamm, knocked that one out of the park. Willie Banks pitched the last 4 innings for a save in the 18-run blowout. Really? I thought Captain Fear, the Bucks mascot, embodied Florida Man, but Raymond takes it to the next level. Looking like he just woke up under a bridge and slapped his adjustable D-Rays trucker-style hat on, Raymond seems ready to smoke some meth and make it into a headline somewhere. He has a counterpart, DJ Kitty, who looks like he supplies him with said meth. Raymond has recently been seen panhandling with a sign that says Montreal or bust. You might see foreign substances a lot on this list, but each time they get more and more amusing. Like when Tampa Bay's reliever Joel Peralta got popped in 2012 for pine tar in his glove, before he could even throw a pitch versus his old team, the Nationals. I guess they knew he was a cheater and called him out for it. Peralta was of course ejected, then tipped his cap to the Nats dugout as he took his walk of shame. This might be an older facility, but there are several things I really like about it. It's near the beach in Port Charlotte, and a boardwalk runs from foul pole to foul pole in the outfield, so you can watch a game and cruise for chicks and eat all the cotton candy you want. Also, the only number retired in the park belongs to Sergeant Michael Wilson, his radio number. He was tragically killed answering a domestic disturbance call in 2013. Much respect. I bet you didn't know there were more than one stupid stadium ideas for the Tampa area, besides the one that got built and is currently being used. That's right, in 1983, with the idea in mind of luring a baseball team to the St. Pete area, architects proposed a baseball field with a tent over it. It was rejected because the residents wanted a fully indoor stadium, not something they could get at a Bass Pro Shop. Hey, you can say the outside of this place is pretty ugly, that's fair, but let's not ignore the inside of this place, which is also horrific. Look, this place gets panned because of the catwalk and sterile environment, but it is better than the alternative, a hot, disgusting outdoor game in the humid air of Southwest Florida. I am impressed that this place has made it 32 years. In 1986, construction began on what would originally be known as the Florida Suncoast Dome, though no one saw the irony in the words sun and dome being in the same name. While their southern Florida counterparts would all play in open-air stadiums, a dome was to protect against humidity and frequent lightning storms that occurred during a baseball season. A roof in the nuclear-hot Florida sun makes sense, but what didn't make sense was why they were building a stadium at all. Since the 70s, the city of St. Petersburg and their residents had an odd fascination with attracting the MLB to the region. Keep this in mind. Tropicana Field was funded by taxpayers, being built without a team in place, and had no timetable for the league to expand. The field was initially built to attract a certain team, the Chicago White Sox. The White Sox had trouble replacing their own aging field, and the city of St. Petersburg was vying to pilfer the storied franchise away from Chicago's South Side. Those plans went awry when the city of Chicago built New Comiskey Park, meaning that once the Suncoast Dome was finished in 1990, their only hope was either luring a team like the San Francisco Giants or hoping the MLB would reward Tampa with a new expansion team. That didn't happen. Their neighbors to the south, Miami, were granted the Marlins in 1993, and a second expansion team was sent to Colorado, as it would be dumb to put two new teams in one state. Meanwhile, the Tampa Bay Storm of the Arena Football League and the Lightning of the NHL were the stadium's only regular tenants. That meant that this new stadium was empty the majority of the year. What was once the Florida Suncoast Dome became the Thunderdome, perhaps the coolest name in all of sports. It would eventually become Tropicana Field, of course. However, it wouldn't be for several years that Tampa was awarded a major league team. Yes, the dome that had been built to house a baseball team languished in agony for 12 years before they finally got one. In 1998, Western Florida was hungry for baseball. They had waited decades and were finally granted a team. The Marlins, in just their 5th year of existence, had won the World Series just a few months before the Devil Rays were to take the field for the first time. For many in the region, the new baseball team was a source of hope, somewhere for a family outing, but for others, it was a source of great resentment. Let's go back to the Trop's construction. While the Rays are nominally linked to Tampa, the field is in St. Petersburg, a good half-hour drive across the bay from Tampa proper, a far more populous area than where they actually broke ground. The 66 acres that the field occupies was sectioned off of what was called the gas plant district in Midtown St. Pete. The district was home to a large African-American population, the ancestors of whom had moved to the district back in the late 1800s to find jobs building Tampa Bay's infrastructure. When the stadium was approved and construction began, many of the district's residents were displaced and given little to no financial help to relocate. Individuals were crippled financially, as were black-owned small businesses. Suffice to say, the Rays hadn't even played a game, and they had already alienated a large potential fan base by the simple fact that they had forced them off of their land. At least they hadn't forced them off of their land and then used them as a mascot, like, well, you know. The field itself was on the former site of a coal gasification plant, which meant that construction was elongated when the city had to remove hazardous chemicals from the soil so that the team name didn't refer to the gamma rays that would end up turning players into workers from Chernobyl. And it's also rumored that there might be some unmarked graves under the field. So the outside had problems, but the inside of the dome was a little less than inspiring. Upon opening, the interior of the Trop was considered drab, a little more comparable to a warehouse or hospital than a Major League Baseball stadium. This was not a great cathedral like Fenway or Wrigley. This was a joyless, soulless AstroTurf environment where baseball was to be transacted 81 plus times a year. There are many quirks that give the field what one might call character. Starting from the top, the roof was built slanted, the idea being that less space would lower air conditioning costs. But the fixed roof at its bizarre angle is supported by a series of catwalks, which aren't quite as far from the ground as they need to be, and that becomes apparent from time to time. Because the dome slants lower to the ground as it reaches the outfield, balls hit in the air can have and will hit one of the 4 catwalks holding the dome up. Depending on which one the ball hits, there's a different outcome, and they've changed over the years. Here were the original rules in 1998 per the Washington Post. The ground rules state that any ball that hits a catwalk can be caught by a fielder on the rebound for an out. It's insane, by the way. A ball that hits a catwalk in foul territory is a foul ball. A ball that hits a catwalk in fair territory but caroms into foul territory is foul. A ball that hits a catwalk in fair territory and lands in fair territory is in play. Makes sense. A ball that gets stuck on a catwalk in fair territory is a double. Any ball that hits the lower catwalk hanging beyond the outfield fence is a home run. Like we said, there are 4 catwalks in total, and parts of all of them are in fair play. 2 of the catwalks are marked in yellow paint, signifying automatic dingers. However, some balls that look like sure homers have hit the B ring and been caught, which is just one of the many infuriating quirks of the park. Oddities like that, plus 2 bullpens in foul territory down the lines, give the Trop all the flaws you would expect an orphan to have. The dome does have some redeeming qualities, like the touch tank where you and the kids can put your greasy hands on Florida's favorite aquatic life. But that's about it. The poor dome, in a neighborhood that hates it, an inside flawed beyond repair, and a team somehow still loved by its fans. Who wouldn't want to play 81 games here? Well, the Rays, that's who. Believe it or not, there have been quite a few attempts to relocate the team to either a new stadium or even a new country. The most serious attempt to build a new home for the Rays came in 2018 when the proposed Ybor Stadium was drawn up. The stadium would have been built in Tampa rather than St. Pete, held about 31,000 and would have cost roughly $900 million, but the plans were canceled within a year when the city couldn't secure funding. Thus, the Rays were left to play out their lease that keeps them in the Trop until 2027. There is one more plan out there in the works, a plan that's never been done before in baseball. As of early 2020, the Rays, with the support of Major League Baseball, have created a plan to play half of their home games at their current venue in St. Pete and the other half in Montreal. I'm not making this up. The Rays are literally caught in a situation where their parents are divorcing and they have to spend time at Dad's house in Canada during the summer. The team would not split time in the 2 cities until 2028, and a time in which theoretically a new open-air stadium would be built in both Tampa and Montreal for the team to play its home games. I don't think this is a crazy idea, Commissioner Rob Manfred said about the 2-city concept. I think that it's a really legitimate effort to try and preserve baseball in Florida for the benefit of the Rays fans. And I do think there is some momentum to it. Hopefully they're negotiating in good faith. For fans of the Rays, there's no question that to have half of a team is better than none, but for baseball fans in Montreal, it's an entirely different question to settle for half when expansion to 32 could be on the horizon and the opportunity to host a non-shared team could be in the cards. Like with the Oakland Athletics, the Rays of the Joe Madden and Kevin Cash era have embraced small market baseball and driven innovation that spread throughout the game. New aggressive shifts, relief pitchers starting a game, data-driven roster moves, and a 96-win team with the lowest payroll in baseball, all of which took place in front of the stark backdrop of the Trop. A building that hosted a World Series in 2008, an unlikely appearance from an overmatched underdog that defied the odds just to get there. Unwanted, seemingly unloved, weird and born with flaws. Baseball's orphan is still here, and when the lights are shut off for the last time, give the Trop a big ol' hug, because we all deserve a chance to be something special.
Just posted the final here. Baltimore defeating Boston 4-3. 2-2 to line shot down the left field line. That ball is gone, and the Rays win it. A line drive home run by Evan Longoria, and the Rays storm the field.
Something smells foul in Tampa Bay. It's a lingering stench, the kind that doesn't clean off easily. One that sticks to anything around it, permeating and penetrating any surface it comes in contact with. The Rays have long had issues with their on-field product, but it's not because of performance. The team itself has thrived, in spite of executive avariciousness. Forced to adapt to a shoestring budget, they've been on the cutting edge of baseball for a while now. Shrewd trades, excellent player development, and pieces that fit the needs of the team have made them into a legitimate contender. This past season, they had a 100-win season to lead the American League. Players like Wander Franco are about to revolutionize the game. And the forward-thinking Rays were one step ahead by rewarding him with an incredible 11-year contract that should match its value quickly. There is no evidence that the Rays will be falling off anytime soon, and they should be respected for that. But this foundation masks a deep scar. Despite these bountiful harvests, people haven't shown up in support. It's been their core issue for a long time. Former franchise face Evan Longoria publicly came out and said the Rays fan base doesn't give a shit. Even during their World Series run in 2008, they were only averaging about 24,000 people a game. This past year, despite Florida opening up and ending capacity limits early, the Rays still had the third lowest attendance of any team in the league. The number of sold tickets has cratered to 9,500 per game. And how many of those buying are opposing fans are anyone's guess. During the playoff push in mid-August, only 5,000 people showed up on average in a weekday series against Baltimore. Heading into the final week of the year, they hovered around 10,000 fans a game against Toronto, and had trouble cracking 20,000 fans on average in a weekend series against Miami. Things have gotten so dire that the Rays couldn't sell out Game 1 of the ALDS, as the AL's leader in wins, and when making a World Series the previous year. All that effort just to get the stands 2/3 full. Game 2 was closer to a sellout, but that may have been because fans from Boston made the trip down. They never got another chance after that, and that may have been for the best. Here's the major issue I have with their attendance woes. This is a good baseball team. The fact that they're still having trouble filling Tropicana Field despite it is absolutely disturbing. On the surface, it's an easy call. Tampa Bay's not a baseball market. They're fair weather fans, and Stu Sternberg is justified in trying to move the team. But that's a cop-out. You need to dig deeper. About a foot. Simply look at the location of where they play. There is no argument from anyone that Tropicana is a dump. It's a soulless cavern that harkens back to the dull domes of the 80s, where AstroTurf and ACL tears were the norm. It's been consistently ranked as one of the worst stadiums in baseball for God knows how long. And nobody's coming there for an experience. Ownership's argument is concise. They need a new stadium. If they don't get it here, they'll get it elsewhere. They're hemorrhaging money due to it. Ignore that revenue sharing all but covers most costs the Rays accrue over a season, but they could be making more. Once again, on the surface, it's an easy assumption to make that fans don't care about the Rays. If they had, people would still show up to games because the team is good. But I want to ask you a question. Are you familiar with where Tropicana Field is? It's not located in the major population center of Tampa, but its sister city in St. Petersburg, which is not only lesser in terms of the amount of people living there, but also average income. Think of it like having a team representing Dallas, but them playing in Fort Worth. Now, if the stadium were relatively easy to get to, it wouldn't be much of a problem, but they're on a coastline with a base sandwiched in between cities. Not to mention that Tropicana is near the southernmost tip of the peat with no way to get to it in any other direction. Unless you want to spend hours on buses, public transit is off the table. The only way to get between cities is by car on 3 bridges. The major one being the Howard Franklin Bridge, a 4-laner that would be ideal if not for major construction taking place on it until 2025. It's not affecting it for now, but there may be eventually some pain due to it. The others are Gandy Bridge to the south, a 2-lane overpass on both sides, and the Courtney Campbell Bridge to the north, a 4-laner that's used more for a connection to Clearwater, not St. Petersburg. Let's suppose you wanted to leave from your office in downtown Tampa for a game during rush hour. That's at least a half-hour drive, if you're lucky. If you're further up in a suburb like Citrus Park, Oldsmar, or Land O'Lakes, it might be up to 45 minutes on an average day. And that's not considering traffic near the Trop being more intense during game days. Would you want to drive that long to get there? Not to mention traffic trying to leave, it's no surprise few have shown up during the regular season. The solution has been clear for a while. This team needs to move. I'm in agreement there, but it's not to another city. The Rays belong in downtown Tampa. The Buccaneers and Lightning are there and have had little trouble filling up seats when they're good. Tampa is a passionate sports city, and I believe they'll support the Rays if they're closer to their main population centers. There was a proposal in the works for a new stadium in Ybor City a few years ago, which would have been perfect not only for fans in Tampa, but potential corporate interests as well. But then you look at the proposed design of the stadium itself. I'm going to give you some time to figure out what's wrong with this from the get-go. Have you figured it out yet? It's a glass dome in the middle of Florida. Do you have any idea how much they're going to be spending not just in maintenance, but in HVAC costs? They'd have serious problems trying to maintain temperature with such a design. Then there was the whole question of who the hell was going to pay for it. Not good when a project falls through before it can even get off the ground. We must also consider the St. Petersburg dilemma. They are really goddamn petty when it comes to the Rays. Like the kid who sees the shiny toy at the store, they cling onto it and pout until they get the response they want. The Rays are locked into a lease at Tropicana until 2027, and have refused to budge on a compromise to appease them, which is obviously great news for all the baseball-hungry fans in Tampa. So with all sides of this conflict caught up in a dick-measuring contest, it seems like Sternberg and company threw their hands in the air and decided that they didn't want to try that hard on a solution. It's now allegedly impossible for them to keep the Rays in the area full-time. But St. Petersburg won't let them out of their lease early. So the answer is to simply fence it. They want to go halfsies with another city. As much as I want to laugh at it outright, I'll give it some consideration. I guess it could work if it's done properly. There may be some benefit to potentially expanding the regional brand in a place like Orlando or Jacksonville. Perhaps sharing with a potential suitor for a major league team. Say Nashville or Charlotte or even someplace like San Antonio. No, those options would make too much sense. For their plan, they're choosing Montreal. This is quite possibly the dumbest scheme I've heard in a long time, and it's not just because of the half-city model. Do they have any idea what kind of bullshit Montreal had to put up with when the Expos were there? With how many times baseball itself has fucked over the city? Decades of god-awful ownership that blew up the team every chance it got? Repeated failures on the field? They've been railroaded so hard that Montrealers abandoned the sport like it had abandoned them. The scars of 1994 run deep, and I don't know if they've even considered forgiving MLB for robbing them of a playoff run. I bet they remember the league nearly contracting the franchise out of mere convenience very fondly. Oh yes, I forgot that was after they rewarded their previous owner that ran them into the ground with another team to ruin. With how cheap the Expos were in their previous iterations, you want me to seriously consider the viability of a team as spendthrift as the Rays up there? I'm gonna tell you what'll happen if they're not stupid. The city will spit in their faces. Where are they gonna play? They certainly can't go back to Olympic Stadium. If they thought Tropicana was bad, oh boy are they in for a rude awakening. That place was terrible for baseball when it opened. What else do they do? Mold Molson Stadium into a baseball field? A hostile takeover of Parc Jarry from the clutches of tennis? There are grumblings of a new stadium near the waterfront, but is it going to get built for a half-season team with no links to the city? The only way Montreal will accept baseball again is if the Expos come back full-time in a new stadium. Anything else will be seen as a two-bit floozy. The Rays brass will ramble about how this is an innovative and groundbreaking enterprise, but it honestly isn't. This half-season jet setting has been done before. When the Cincinnati Royals moved to Kansas City in 1972, they didn't have a viable NBA stadium. So their idea was to spend half the year in KC and the other part in Omaha, Nebraska in a larger arena. They were called the Kansas City Omaha Kings. The arrangement only lasted until 1975 when the Kings got a new arena in KC itself. And it wasn't done as a vain attempt at blackmail, it was done out of necessity. And what about Montreal in 2003? They had to deal with the same damn situation themselves when the Expos played half a season in goddamn Puerto Rico. They got more support there than in Montreal, but that was because they had great Latin American players on the team at the time. And San Juan was hoping for a more full-time arrangement. And what about Tampa Bay? What about the corporate interests there? Are they going to properly invest in a team that's only going to be there for half a season? If they do, it'll be at a much reduced rate than what they may be paying now. Note that I haven't talked about any corporations in Montreal yet. They'd have different demands than those in Tampa would have, and it would just create a tug of war in terms of culture clash. So they're not only going to get less corporate funding from every suitor, the Rays would have to sell them on trying to share an identity when Tampa and Montreal are as different as milk and rock. Their only similarity is that they're in the same damn time zone. The Rays speak in ultimatums, as if this half-baked scheme is the only way the team is going to remain in Tampa altogether, but I see right through it. You're not as smart as you think you are, Stu. We know what you're trying to pull. You want a few more bucks from Tampa and St. Petersburg while triple-dipping in both MLB revenue sharing and any potential public funding from another city. Who do you think you are? A French royal declaring that the poor can eat cake as they starve? Guess what, buddy? You can't have your cake and eat it too. A performer that tries to please everybody will leave no one satisfied. This is what the Rays are trying to do. They want to oblige St. Petersburg's lease in a half-assed manner while seeking new blood money elsewhere. And they will more than likely fall flat on their faces doing so. Baseball will probably play along with it because Rob Manfred is a spineless cuck and the potential for a few extra bucks is there. But the damage to an already damaged brand will be severe. When I speak of the Rays, I have no issues with the players, the fans, or how they run their baseball ops. Those parts of the team are to be respected. But I sincerely hope that they fail miserably in all aspects for as long as they try this bullshit. They are leaving several cities out to dry. They are not negotiating in good faith. And their efforts not only cast a dark cloud on the team, but on the sport as a whole. Ideally, Stuart Sternberg would be flung into the Gulf of Mexico for a savior that will move the team to Tampa proper, where they will flourish with a new stadium. However, that seems to be a pipe dream at this point in time. Just remember this. The problem isn't with the fans in Tampa Bay. It's the organization itself. The endless road offers no rest for the weary. The Rays will learn this the hard way. I hope for their sake they recognize the error of their ways before then.